Hearing will come to order. Let me thank Deputy Secretary of State Burns for coming while this was planned, obviously well before the current state of events, understanding the challenges of your schedule. We appreciate you still being here today with us, as well as all of our panelists for being here to provide their perspective on the increasingly violent spillover from the ongoing conflict in Syria, and to hear also from the Deputy Secretary on the implication of Russia's military intervention in the Ukraine. And as a cautionary note, we have a vote that will be taking place at around 11:20, so we'll see where we're at in the proceeding. We may have to recess briefly. It's one vote and then to come back, and I'm sure the Deputy Secretary would be happy for us to cast that vote since it's about Rose Gottmaler. So as we enter the year 3 of the Syria crisis, headlines coming out of the region are no longer limited to the violence within Syria, but to the increasing spread of violence across Syria's borders, especially into Lebanon and Iraq. Of great concern is the proliferation of al-Qaeda affiliates and splinter groups and the increasing sectarian rhetoric fueling the increased violence that offers new opportunities for al-Qaeda to gain footholds in local communities. It opens the door for an Iranian-sponsored terrorist network to justify their presence as the protector of the region's Shias while bolstering the Assad regime and antagonizing Arab states. The spillover from Syria is dangerous and troubling. In Lebanon, there's been an alarming uptick in high-profile bombings, many claimed by the al-Qaeda-affiliated Abdullah Azzam brigades, and at the same time, Hezbollah, purportedly protecting the Lebanese Shia community, is now extended into Syria, protecting the Assad regime. From where I sit, the region is becoming increasingly unstable, increasingly violent, and increasingly sectarian. Having said that, that is a major challenge for which the committee obviously wanted to rivet our attention. Ukraine is the 800-pound gorilla at the moment, and we can't ignore it, nor can we ignore that Russia is a common element in both countries. Russia's support for Assad in Syria and the Russian invasion and occupation of parts of Ukraine make clear that Putin's game isn't 21st century statesmanship, but 19th century gamesmanship. The brave protesters in Maidan Square, having lived under Russia's mantle for years, stood their ground because they understood that their fight wasn't just with their government's corrupt leaders, but for the very future of their independent nation. Putin has cast aside both international law and his nation's own commitments to respect the territorial integrity of the Ukraine. We need a policy that checks and counters Russia's intent and self-centered nationalistic and imperialistic policy that adheres to no law, not international law, not even those commitments it has made personally. Today, our concern is for the Ukraine. Tomorrow, it again could be for Georgia or perhaps Moldova, two nations waiting to finalize their association agreement with the European Union, a process that the Ukraine was engaged in to the displeasure of the Russian government. So I want to note that I welcome the administration's expeditious response to the situation in Ukraine, the pledge of assistance in the form of loan guarantees, which this committee intends to endorse in legislation next week, and today's executive order restricting visas, freezing assets, blocking property under U.S. jurisdiction, and preventing American companies from doing business with any individual or entity identified by the administration that threatens the peace, security, stability, sovereignty, or territorial integrity of Ukraine, or contributes to the misappropriation of state assets of the Ukraine, or purports to assert governmental authority over any part of Ukraine without authorization from the Ukrainian government in Kiev. This flexible tool will allow the U.S. to target those directly responsible for the Crimean crisis and will further put Putin and his allies on notice that Russia's actions are not without consequence. The committee is prepared to codify this action and potentially provide the President with further authority to respond to the situation as it develops. President Putin's game of Russian roulette has pointed the gun at the international community's head. I believe this time he has miscalculated, and I certainly believe it's essential that we do not blink. The unity of purpose displayed at the UN Security Council by the European Union and the G7 nations in support of Ukrainian autonomy and in opposition to Russian authoritarianism demonstrates the world's outrage and I believe serves as a call to action. With that, I'd be happy to recognize the distinguished ranking Republican Senator Corker for his remarks.